better than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the privacy. I make it rain dollars, they watch me disappear. I'm so fly, man, I'ma need some land again.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch. This is a show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. Reality it is. Today I have a special guest of mine, Stephen Sidorovski from Zenith Legal. Thank you for joining us today, Steve.
Thanks for having me, Nate.
Awesome. So people, when they go to buy a property, do something when it comes to property, they talk about conveyancers and lawyers and stuff like that. It's very important that you're protected, right? And Stephen has been my personal lawyer for how long now? 15 years?
Yeah, about 15 years.
15 years, wow.
Makes us feel old.
We're getting old, eh? We're like 25 now. Next minute we're waking up and we're nearly 40. So
that's exactly right.
It's crazy. So Stephen's been my personal lawyer now for 15 years, most of my property investing journey. I remember when I met you, Steve, we've sort of grown together as well, like with, learning and all that. You were like a graduate lawyer in the firm that you were working in many years ago. And I had a lawyer that my family had used for like 20 years or 30 years. And the lawyer, bless him, whatever, nice guy, all that. But I got so pissed off because he cost me a deal, and I still hurt from this deal. It was a deal in Gosford. It was a brand new unit for $160,000. It was worth $220,000, and he failed to send the contract on my request. And he didn't have email, didn't have his old fax and phone guy, no text message, no nothing. And he cost me $60,000. I'm still fucking bitter about it today because that thing would be worth over $500,000, right?
Yeah.
And so now I met you soon after that, and you've helped me. I've caused you lots of stress over the years. I know that. Thank you. And we've done lots of cool things. We would have done thousands and thousands and thousands of matters together. My personal stuff, like hundreds of transactions that you've done for me personally. So thank you, Stephen, and your team for everything that you do. But I guess we've all realised Stephen's my lawyer. Might have a few questions for Stephen to introduce himself, to get to know Steve. So maybe if you could share with people what the day of a life of a lawyer is like, and everyone watches Suits and thinks it's about putting bad guys in jail and stuff like that. It's very different from what me and you work on.
It's very different, right? So Suits is all about, having something on somebody, and that's how you sort of, get up on it. But look, in reality and in my area especially, so I do mainly like property law, conveyancing, wills and estates. So I'm not sort of in and out of court. I'm more sort of in the office seeing clients, negotiating contract terms, checking deadlines, reviewing contracts, providing advice, that sort of stuff. So it is sort of different stuff every day because you have different issues that pop up in different matters every day. But it's very much detailed and just making sure that, super organized, keeping on top of all the files and making sure we don't miss any deadlines.
Yeah. Awesome. And you said that I've never watched Suits. I don't know what it's about, but I just know people talk about these suit shows and stuff. Yeah. But you said that you don't go to court and all that sort of stuff. And I think it's very important to know that, there's lots of different areas of law out there, but Steve's role is to protect you, right? And throughout all the things, I've said some really crazy things over the years, right? I've done very, structured deals and 20 deals strapped together, like all different things over the years, and I've never been sued once, right? I've never gotten into trouble. Over 20 years of investing, I've never been sued, never been in trouble, never lost anything, and touch wood, we're going to keep doing that, right? There's a difference between a lawyer that's out there to try and get someone's blood, and there's a difference between the lawyer that's there to protect you, and I think that that's a big thing about what you do, Steve. I've never seen anyone over tens of thousands of transactions that have occurred in all different ways, buys, sells, all different stuff like that. I've never seen anyone lose out, get into trouble. There's never been a cross suit. No one's ever sued you as a business, I'd imagine, right? And it's like, it seems like, yeah, it's very, very particular. The timing of the date, of the cooling off period, the transaction, everything has to be there to look after the client's journey. And there's something, I've never seen it with any other lawyer. So it's very, very good.
Yeah, it's and it's also like when you're in this field, I think specialization is key. So like you can go and see a lawyer that does everything. They do litigation, they do bankruptcy, they do criminal law, and they do conveyancing and property. And then you try and get a hold of them, and they're in court for 3 days, and they know a little bit about everything, but they don't know a lot about anything in particular. So it's really important that if you're using a lawyer or a solicitor, that you use one that sort of specializes in the field that you're dealing with. So in this case, if it's property law or conveyancing, it's someone that specializes in that.
Yeah, awesome. I guess it's if someone was playing around with their cars, they wouldn't get the auto electrician to do the battery repairs. It's
Exactly.
different.
Works the same way.
Cool. And I guess over the years, since when you first started and becoming a lawyer to now, like there's been lots of changes, right? Like you would have had big files, and I know you still got manual files, and there's like digital stuff, and how things are done. There's PEXA, there's all different things that have evolved over the years. What are some of the opportunities that you see out there at the moment which are cool and people should be concerned about? Or
yeah. So in our industry at the moment, there has been a big shift towards automation, and the risk with AI is that not one approach is going to be suitable for every single matter and every single client. So there's a lot of AI stuff happening at the moment. There's a lot of online law firms where you basically pay them and they just spit out a document and say, this is for you, but it's actually not tailored to you or for what you need. So it's super important to to still have that human aspect and have someone to actually review your position, find out what you need, review the contract, make sure the contract suits your needs, and you can't really do that by punching details into a program and then spitting out a document.
Wow, very interesting, Steve. Very interesting. Now, I think that sort of takes us on to our discussion today. That I'm just sitting here thinking about ChatGPT. I've never used it. I've got no intention of using it. But people are using it, and it's a scary world that we live in, right? And I wanted to, I guess, talk about. There's a lot of, I reckon, probably 70% of people when they come to B.Invested that they are first-time buyers of a property, right? They're buying their first investment property, whatever the case may be. And I think when you go to a lawyer, like I always say, go to a lawyer, right? I'm not even referring going to a conveyancer, right? But what's the difference? Someone's buying a house or a property for the first time. What's the difference between a lawyer and a conveyancer? I'll give my thoughts and view on it as a funny layman's term later, but I guess if you can explain the difference, because a lot of people may not know the difference, and it's a very big difference.
Yeah, for sure. So a conveyancer basically has a license to be able to transfer title in property, right? So they're licensed to run through the transaction and do all the transactional requirements to transfer a property from person A to person B. And for all intents and purposes, it might be fine, but they can't actually give legal advice because they're not solicitors, they're not lawyers. And if an issue arises, they would probably have to refer it to a solicitor to be able to provide legal advice to the clients.
They can't hold money on a trust. The money has to go to a lawyer, not to them, because they can't hold the trust monies as well. Is that right?
So that's changed recently. So conveyancers can hold trust accounts just like licensed real estate agents as long as they're licensed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed, like I reckon that 90% of people that I work with use Zenith, right? Use your firm. But I reckon that there's 10% that don't. And when we do those deals, there's fuck up after fuck up after fuck up. on those deals, right? And it's just because the lawyers or the conveyancer don't understand the whole process. And it's interesting you said that in a law firm, you normally have, a lawyer that's at court one day doing something, and the next minute you could be sitting there trying to sign the contract for your first house, and you've got a gangster member sitting there getting off, I don't know, bikie charges or something, right? And it's like, it's different sort of world. They have to put different hats on. But you specialize in property law, which is what you do. Looking at the impacts, like I've seen people which have had the conveyancers which have done backhanded deals because they just have, right? They don't have the same legal parameters that you have to abide by as a lawyer. I've seen searches that haven't come back correctly, meaning that properties are located in different spots and they haven't done the search correctly and they've bought the wrong asset, right? Just random little things that I've seen over the years. And I always think it's very important that there's a big difference. Like, I don't even know what the cost of, I don't even look at the cost of legal fees. I don't look at the cost of, I've never spoken to a conveyancer about their costs, but like, if someone's spending an extra $500 on a lawyer or whatever, like, that's a big fucking difference that you're getting as a result for an extra $500 or whatever it is. So my feedback to people is don't be a cheap ass and make sure you have a lawyer. And I think that Stephen's fees are very, very reasonable out there in the market and very cheap for what he does. But I'm not trying to pump you up to you, Steve, and say everyone calls Zenith. Feel free to drop your phone number in at some point. But with it, I think for the difference that you would be paying, people go, oh, the conveyance is cheaper or saved a couple of $100. It's like the conveyancer 9 times out of 10 leaves you exposed to problems. So yeah.
Look, and as far as cost wise, especially now, I think before conveyancers were much cheaper, but they're pretty much on par.
Really?
They're not a lot cheaper. I mean, look, obviously it depends. But again, I'm not aware of any sort of ethics requirements that they have, whereas solicitors do. Like, there's the solicitors rules that we have to act ethically, with integrity and honestly, and they may have something similar, I'm not sure, but we've definitely got a stricter set of guidelines that we have to abide by, and obviously acting in the best interest of the client. So you might go through a transaction and it might be fine, but the chance is you're buying this huge asset. If you don't want to take the risk and you want to get the right advice, then my recommendation is to go with a solicitor.
I remember two vivid transactions. One, the conveyancer. These were not deals that I've ever done that I've been a part of, but it was someone that I heard of. They were selling a property, and the conveyancer had actually done a deal with the developer in the back end. Right, they're getting kickbacks from that. Yeah. And then another one, which is a good mate of both mine and yours. We go way back. He bought a property years ago, and the conveyancer that he used the first time had actually gone behind his back to the agent and tried to negotiate the deal for themselves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It just occurred to me, right?
Yeah.
But they're just little things like,
yeah.
In that clause, it's like, maybe we'll get into it a little bit later about, because you look after, like New South Wales. What states do you look after, Steve?
Yeah, so New South Wales, Queensland, and WA now.
So you're looking after different law in different states. Like if we buy a property in Sydney, you get like a 5 or a 10-day cooling off period with the property. But if you're in Queensland, you always put in the contract 21-day finance, 21-day legal, due diligence, stuff like that. A conveyancer isn't putting those things into a contract, right? They're not putting their own legal clauses in there. You've got the legal clause because you're a lawyer.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
I guess whilst we're on that, like, what differences, like, what things should people be watching out for? Like, if someone's buying a property and they're based in Sydney and they're buying in Queensland, or they're buying in, Western Australia. I guess you're here and you're in other states, but like, you give that guidance, cross borders where most lawyers can't because they don't have that licensing that you've got. But what things should people be watching out for to protect themselves and make sure are in place in different locations? What things should be watching out for?
Yeah, absolutely. So we normally recommend that we do a quick review of the contract before you sign it. Now, if, for example, you're a B.Invested client, your team know my requirements for contracts. So they'll make sure that those requirements are in there before they're signed by the buyers. But if there was anyone else that was going to sign a contract, then we'd make sure we have a look at it. In New South Wales, we make sure that you sign with at least a 10 business day cooling off period. In Queensland, we'd make sure that we put in in Queensland, you've got your standard pest and building and finance clauses, so subject to satisfactory finance and inspections. But we also put in a due diligence clause, so that'll cover things like if you're buying in a unit complex, getting a strata report, tenancy details, initial contract searches, things that come up on the title. Essentially, due diligence covers like a broad range of other issues that may affect the property. So in New South Wales, a cooling off period just covers everything, right? So you can pull out for any reason. But in Queensland, if you don't have that due diligence clause, your rights are quite limited. And likewise in WA as well. So WA doesn't even have a cooling off period at all. And their finance clause is quite strict, and their inspection clauses, it's not even a pest and building, it's a major structural defects clause and a timber pest infestation clause. So if you only have those two, again, your rights are very limited. And if you don't have a due diligence clause or a cooling off period, then if any other issues arise, you'd be stuck and you wouldn't be able to necessarily pull out of the contract.
Yeah. And one thing that you've designed, I've seen recently, because trying to get clauses put in isn't an easy task, right? I guess that's not me just blowing my own trumpet about why it's important for the buyer's agent, but it's very important that we have all those things to protect people and negotiate that with the other side. Like in Western Australia, they don't have any of this protection, and it's very, cowboy-like over there, which is different. But I actually seen that you've put together a cooling off period as a special condition to put inside the contract to create a cooling off period, which is, I ain't seen no conveyancer doing that. No one in Western Australia has done that.
No, absolutely. And, it's something that obviously we can do. We can put a cooling off period in there. Again, it comes down to what's negotiated. But at the end of the day, we're here to act for the best interests of our client, which in this case would be the buyer. So we want to protect them to make sure that that they do have that option if something nasty comes up, that they have that right to be able to pull out.
Yeah. And what sort of, like, say someone's buying a property for the first time, lots of people, like, for me, it's just like, oh, here's a contract, make sure it's okay, it's gone, and but what sort of checks and due diligence should people be looking out for when buying a property, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so we obviously review the full contract, and in different states, there's different requirements for contracts. So in New South Wales, the requirements are a little bit more strict. So the contracts have a lot more information. In Queensland, not so much. In WA, there's almost no requirements or attachments to the contract. So we have to order all these searches. So like title searches, plans of the land, so you know what you're buying, searches for the zoning of the land, flood searches, sewer diagrams, all that sort of stuff. Like, and with those particular searches, like title searches, we want to check that everything's in order on the title. With sewer diagrams, obviously we want to check to make sure the house isn't built on top of the sewer without approval. So there's heaps of things that we need to look out for. And these are things that either, if they're in the contract, we'll provide you with advice on it. If they're not in the contract, we usually order them or recommend that you order them. And obviously there's the reports that you mentioned. So pest and building reports, strata reports, like they're really important things that can come up in a strata report. So in Queensland, you've got a disclosure statement, right? So it tells you very basic information about the strata. So the levies, that the complex is insured, and that's about it. But a strata report will actually, it'll have minutes of any meetings held by the owners. It'll have their financial standing. It'll have all their insurances, any issues that, might be raised, they'll come up. So it just gives you a little snapshot of, if there's any major issues. Like we see strata reports where, the developers haven't come back and remedied all these defects, and they've gone to court and they've tried to sue them and they've been unsuccessful. And then there's like, a $2 million bill that all the owners have to fork out to rectify this building.
Yeah. I've seen conveyancers for people that have never done half those searches, right? They've never seen there's any issues there. It's insane.
Yeah. So like, again, look, it's a risk that you take. And obviously even with our clients, we say, look, this is what we recommend. And then it's up to you. Like if we say, this is the reason why we recommend you get this. If you don't want to get it, you don't have to. But obviously you take that risk.
Yeah. And I guess there's levels that you get to where it's the first one, you're like, I want to get all the checks, right? And then you get the fifth one, it's like, oh, we only need these ones. And you get to my stage, like, just Steve, make sure it goes through. Let's go, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I guess it comes down to your confidence of, like, as an investor, what you need to get checked out on and what not. With the reports, like, important, like, because I don't think a lot of people focus on this when they're buying properties. Like, we buy properties all the time. We send you the client contracts and that. You do your pest and building and all that sort of stuff. What percentage do you think would come back and would be able that we negotiate? The price comes down by even $1 or $500 or $1,000. Like, what percentage would come down after?
Probably 80%.
80%.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what it was, but yeah, that's good. Yeah,
there's a lot. Yeah.
So the negotiation doesn't stop when you're buying the property. It's throughout the process. If you're not happy with your reports, go back and ask for some money off. Go back and try and shake a few dollars off that. And it's sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
Half the time they tell us piss off. You might get $500.
Yeah, something's better than nothing. And even on that, like when you're negotiating, we usually recommend in the first instance try and go through your buyer's agent and the selling agent, because obviously the selling agent has a vested interest. They want to make the deal happen. And then if they can't, if they're not responding or they're not getting a response, then come through us and we'll request it through the solicitor. And then that way, we can get some sort of response for you. But it's always better if you can get it already negotiated through the selling agent, and then we just confirm it, because the solicitor acting for the seller, he's got no interest in trying to make a deal happen.
Yeah, he's just there to protect the client's interest and say, no, yes, whatever. And I think if you can overshoot the reduction, there's like little soft spots, and we're not going to go into those numbers of where we try and target for. There's soft points where you ask for a little bit of money, they're like, okay, we'll give you some money off, just make it happen. You ask for way too much, they're going to say, well, I want reports, I want to see this. When they see it, they're going to be like, well, that's just normal, get out of here, piss off. So you don't want to aggravate the other side of it. And I think in a lot of instances where people don't go to their agent to try and get the reduction, they don't go to their lawyer, they just don't ask for the reduction. But then also, I feel my role as a buyer's agent for our clients, when we go back to the agent, we can have a professional conversation, not like, oh, I'm not going to buy it, I hate you, agent, you're a dickhead, buys the property, you sold it full of termites, none of that. It becomes a third party, right? So it's like, hey, Mr. Real Estate Agent, it looks like we're going to have a deal done. There's a problem that's come up. We know what lawyers are like. They're saying pull out. The client's all scared. The property's got some issues with it. Looks like the thing's going to fall over, basically. However, I'm able to try and keep the buyer together on the deal, Mr. Real Estate Agent. If we can just get $5,000 off, if we can just get whatever the figure is off, I think we can keep the deal together. And having that third party to be able to massage it's very important as well. So for a first home buyer, is there anything else that you think people should be aware of or looking at or thinking of?
Yeah, so for first home buyers, we just have to be mindful of the exemptions and the concessions in relation to stamp duty. So if you're a first home buyer, for example, in New South Wales, the threshold, they've recently just bumped it up. It's anything under 800,000. If you're a first home buyer and you're eligible, you don't have to pay stamp duty. Anything between 800,000 and $1 million, you get a discount on stamp duty. So it's really important that when you're engaging your solicitor, that you let them know that you're a first home buyer, so they can say, okay, well, these are the incentives that are available to you. Because I've heard of a lot of first home buyers missing out. So they'll go ahead, they'll purchase, it's settled. They never told anyone they were first home buyers and they paid full stamp duty. So that's really important. And with Queensland, I mean, if anyone's thinking to move up to Queensland, even if you're not a first home buyer, they've got home concession. So there, if you're buying to live in, you get a discount off the stamp duty.
How much is it off, roughly?
It's on a scale, so it's not like a percentage. So it's on a scale. So depending on the price, and you fill out your form for your home concession. There's a few requirements that you have to live there for at least 12 months. And then you apply for that and you get a discount for stamp duty. It's not huge, but it's still better than paying full stamp duty.
Okay, cool. And I think a lot of people don't realize like terms when it comes to first home buyer grant, right? Like because so many people come in there and think, oh, I've got to move straight into the property and all that. Do you have to move into the property the day you buy it, or does it start like within 365 days? What's the rulings around it?
Yeah, so in New South Wales, you have to move in within the first 12 months after the settlement date, and live there for a minimum of 6 months. So you can buy a property that's tenanted, as long as tenant moves out within 12 months after it settles and you move in, then you're still eligible.
And how long do you have to live in the property?
I believe it's still 6 months.
6 months, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So you can buy a property, rent it for 364 days, move in the 364th day, stay there for 6 months, and then your position changed and whatever. I'm not asking you for advice, but just hypothetically, like people. Yeah. So I'm saying that just so people know the parameters of it. A lot of people think that you have to move in the day you buy it.
Yeah, no, that's not the case.
Yeah. Or that they can live in there for a week and then they can claim it and stuff. So there's rules around it. Something there's more, but no one talks about, Steve. No one plans on dying, right? But people die, and it happens. It's a part of life, unfortunately. A lot of people don't realize the implications that they're putting on their family, their spouse, or whatever. And every time you buy a property or change your financial position, you're putting yourself at risk. And I think a will is something that people, they say you shouldn't talk about politics or religion or sex at the dinner table, right? But they probably say you shouldn't talk about death and wills and stuff. But we go there. Who should have a will?
So everyone should have a will. Anyone who's over 18 should have a will.
And when should you upgrade your will?
Anytime your circumstances change. So essentially, look, there's different ways of drafting wills, and we like to draft them in a way that is not, especially for like our clients that are property investors, right? They buy properties all the time. So it's not going to be very cost effective if you have to change your will every time you buy a new property. When I say your circumstances change, I'm talking about like if you marry or you divorce or somebody, your spouse passes away or something like that changes, then you need to look at changing your will.
Yeah. And does a will just mean that you're, like, if you have a house, it goes to someone? Or what does it mean for your super fund, your life insurance, your children? Can you operate beyond the grave?
To a certain extent. I mean, with your children, you can nominate who you would like to appoint as their legal guardian under your will. So obviously, if when you pass away they're under 18, you can put in your will, I would like to nominate this person as my legal guardian. It's not binding, so it is still subject to the relevant authorities making sure that person is a suitable person to be a guardian. But as far as like super goes, if you have an industry super fund, you would nominate your beneficiaries with the fund. So you have to make sure you check that to make sure that it's updated. Same as your life insurance policy, you nominate the beneficiaries of the policy with the policy provider. Some of them now, both life insurance providers and your super funds, might give you an option to nominate your estate. And if they do, then it'll pass to whoever you've nominated in your will.
Yeah. And like a lot of problems occur, and this isn't just for someone that's buying a first property, whatever, but I think, it's a conversation. We go through different stages of our life. We're young, we're old, all that. Like we have parents that are old, you've got siblings, stuff like that. Like it's not just that you should be looking at your position. It's like, what's going to happen? Like how many people would, I don't know if you know the stats on this, but how many people would have like a family fallout once someone dies or a parent dies with a lot of emotion and stuff like that? Like you need to, I guess, make sure that your parents have got a will and, it's clear, that stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, before I actually started working in the industry, I used to think, whatever's in your will should be in your will, and no one should be able to contest your will, right? Like it should be, these are your wishes, and that's it. You shouldn't have a right. But earlier on, when I started practice, and we had this lady come in, and she was, elderly, and she just had a falling out with her son after all these years. She was in her 80s and lived, had a great relationship, but just had a falling out in the last month, and she changed her will. And then, a couple of weeks later, she passed away. And this son that looked after her whole life, lived with her, was left out of the will. And then when you see it from that point of view, you think, well, maybe there needs to be some tools in place for people to be able to challenge a will, because, people's circumstances change. And then, obviously it's still uncertain, but there's still that mechanism there that allows that to be, to be seen through.
Yeah. And I guess an emotional time when that stuff happens. So it's like,
yeah, absolutely.
People don't think straight and all that. So cool. And I guess just as a bit of a wrap up on today's podcast, Steve, thanks for coming on and spending some time with us. What would be one tip that you could give to a new investor or new homeowner starting out and buying their first property or just getting into the property market?
Yeah, absolutely. Do your due diligence. Get a solicitor on board. Make sure you do all your searches. Do your pest and building reports. Do your strata report. Get your finance approved. Line up all your ducks, because if you got, you're prepared, you're organised, and you're informed, then you can make a good decision. So that would be my advice to first-time buyers.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you, mate. And how would people connect with you if they want to come and see the Birchy's personal lawyer and get all the good special legal advice that they need? How would they reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can contact us via our website, so zenithlegal.com.au, or you can send me an email, stephen@zenithlegal.com.au, or drop us a line, or call the office.
Do you know your office number off the top of your head? You don't call it all the time, but
yeah, 02 9002 0520.
Steve's hotline. So thank you, Steve. I appreciate that, mate. Thank you for all that you do for our clients and for myself over the last 15 years, and to many more deals that we do together. So,
absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome, Steve. Thank you very much. And thank you for everyone for watching. If you like the podcast, make sure you give us a like, share it with your friends and family. And you can always listen to us at Google Play, Apple Play, Spotify, and YouTube every week. We'll catch up soon. Have a great day. If you need to contact us at B.Invested headquarters, 1300 367 925, admin@binvested.com.au. Have a great day. Bye.
Like Bilal said, man, we stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar back to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all tell lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite, the Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, here for the taking, my time is never wasted.